It's quite typical that the conflicts become, it starts from some rational arguments about parking lots or using of public space, and immediately shift towards a conflicts of civilization argument. We, them, the friend, the enemy, the non-integrable, and we, the society. And so this is important to take into account, because in many conflicts, for instance, we have seen at play attitudes that are not easily explicable through, not through philosophy, neither through sociology, but even more through ethology and social biology. If I think that the refusal of mosque bringing pigs to walk on the site where a mosque is supposed to be built, or throwing pig blood or pig urine or an entire pig inside the mosque, it's a way of desacralize the place. And this is interesting too, and dramatic too, the return in the political language and the political conflicts of a language linked to sacralization, desacralization, pure and impure. We know from the past century which drama this has brought. So we have to avoid it, and in the same time, avoid it doesn't mean not to take into account. If the conflict has this language, it's because it comes much more from the stomach than from the head, or it's much more visceral than normally observers think. And this means that it is profound, that it is serious, that it is a conflict we have to deal with. In conflict, you deal with actors, but also with actors that change their mind through the conflict. You don't have the same opinion before litigation with a friend or with your wife, and during and after. I mean, also you changes, and you, even through the litigation, you start to take into account the position of the other as well. And the following time, you will discover yourself using part of his or her argument in talking about an issue. So it is a social process, social dynamic. It's not rigid, it's not static, it's not essentialistic. So we have to deal with it in movement, dynamically. So that's why I say step by step. There's not easy solution to that, but there are societal solutions we can agree on. The problem of reactive identities is that we find them on both sides, on societal side, but also on Muslims and other minority side, because you react to the opinion of the others. If the opinion is negative, you feel marginalized, put aside from society, and this is not a good route for integration. But what happens is that conflict is not a destiny, but it's a phase. And probably it is a necessary phase. You only can solve a conflict passing through it, if you want to solve it with reasonable, solid solutions. And so we as society have to learn to call the conflict with its own name, and the name of the conflict is the name that people give to the conflict. So if people have something to say about mosques or about Muslims in general, it's better to call it that way, not through politically correct expressions or linguistic attempts to solve the conflict. The conflict is there, so you cannot solve it linguistically, just saying there is no conflict or it's not that way. The conflict is exactly the way it is. But the problem is we have to put the parts in condition to talk each other, of course, but also to propose ways of resolution to the conflict that we can find on our founding principles. Yeah, in recent years, conflict has been based mainly on cultural and religious terms, and particularly in symbols. It's not strange that most conflicts are about the hijab or the crucifix or whatever. I mean, it's the use of symbol in the public space has changed, and it's a very important argument, because symbols mean visibility. The minaret, the crucifix, the hijab, this means the visibility of a culture and of a religion. If you look at a lot of situations like the Swiss referendum about minarets, most of the people who voted against the minaret, they asked the question, say, well, I have nothing against Muslims. So I'm against the visibility of Islam in the public space. So it's obviously a serious issue. For example, universalism, the fact that the laws is the same for everybody, and the protection of minorities. The same use of the referendum as a tool is highly problematic, because in the surface it seems that you ask the opinion to people about constructing a mosque, as it was the most democratic means of the world, but in reality it turns to be the least democratic, because in the Western, on the Western basis and the Western principles, majorities cannot decide about the rights of minorities. It's contradictory to the Western history. I mean, rights are there exactly for the contrary, for protecting minorities. So there is a problematic tendency to use also apparently democratic means to pursue anti-democratic policies. And this is a serious problem. We have to debate a lot, because it's not debated in these terms, and it should. The fact that the law is the same for everybody, for instance, should suggest something about the fact that we often attempt to apply to Muslim specific laws because we think they are exceptional case. Not necessarily they are. They can treat it as the others. And this is in terms of institutional specific bodies to represent Muslim. Not necessarily they are useful. The existing bodies to represent religious minorities can work very well also for Muslims. But anyway, we have to pass through a phase of conflict that will become much more harder in the next years, because of several reasons, include the political reason, the raising of anti-Islamic opinion and parties. But as I said, this conflict is a phase and not a destiny. I mean, it's a phase through which we need to go through in order to solve our conflicts.